In 2011, Mark Reed said that how something is categorized is determined by who does it, for whom, when, and where. Reed used the example of tomato puree. He said, "What would have happened if this item were to be shelved in another part of the shop? Would the thing itself be any different?" I then applied this to my thriller film, given that if I had shelved it in a different genre, what would have made it part of that genre? What ingredients and conventional features have I used that ensure my product stays within the thriller genre? This was something I considered when thinking about how I created continuity between my products, given that I thought about the different things that I had used in order to shelve my product into the thriller genre and ensure that my products were all decoded to be part of the thriller genre. This was something that was important to think about when creating continuity between my products, given that I would need to ensure that I shelved all of my products within the same genre, given that this would allow the audience to understand that all three of my products were under the same marketing campaign and promoting the same film. Therefore, it was important that I shelved my products in a similar manner and thus combined my products using different techniques. One technique I used to create continuity between my products was shadows. Shadows are a common theme used within the thriller genre, given that they often help to create a tense and eerie atmosphere. Therefore, the manner in which I made heavy use of shadows throughout all three of my media products not only helped me to encode that my advertising campaign was promoting the thriller genre, but it also helped to ensure that my audience would be able to identify that all three of my media products were promoting the same film. Firstly, you are able to see within the image on my magazine front cover that I have successfully been able to use shadows by editing the image on the front cover so that the subject has a shadow behind her. I was able to use shadowing on my magazine front cover through the manner in which I was able to add and apply the shadow tool to this subject, meaning that my subject stood out from the page more and the shadow helped to create an eerie and tense atmosphere. I was also able to use shadowing on my magazine front cover through the manner in which I was able to add and apply the shadow tool to some of the features I had uploaded to the magazine. For example, I added the shadow layer to the puff, meaning that around the puff it stood out given that the shadow had been successfully added. On my magazine front cover, I was also able to add a shadow layer to some of the typefaces, which needed to stand out more than others. For example, the strapline plus. This therefore meant that the use of shadow within my magazine front cover was evidently a theme, given that I had used it lots of times within my magazine. This therefore meant that it was something I endeavoured to use within my poster and trailer, given that it would help to ensure that my products were conforming to the genre conventions, and it would also allow me to combine my media products in a really effective manner. I was also able to consistently use this shadow feature on my film poster too. The way in which I had edited the image on the film poster so that part of her face was coming out of the initial face helped to create a successful shadow effect, given that the secondary face was much weaker and more transparent than the primary face. I was not only able to create shadows within my poster through the editing of the image, but I was also able to add shadow effects to the typeface, thus meaning that I was able to combine my product in a successful manner given that I'd used shadows consistently throughout the three products I created. For example, the way in which I added a shadow effect onto the tagline "Is reality worth living for?" also demonstrates how I was able to add a shadow effect to my work, thus meaning that my typefaces stood out more. It also meant that I was able to combine my three media products in an effective manner, given that I was successfully and consistently using shadows on the typefaces and images in order to ensure that my media products promoted my film in a similar manner. This would therefore help my audience to understand that all three of my products were under the same marketing campaign, given that I was using shadows to effectively create continuity between my work. This therefore helped me create a brand identity that would be easily recognizable by my audiences and consumers. Therefore, I think my use of shadows to create continuity between my work shows how I was able to successfully and effectively combine my three media products. As you can see from the way in which I edited the film title on the film magazine and poster, I was also successfully able to create a shadowing effect on the film title. This therefore worked well with the ideas behind my film, given that the title was called Perception, helping to allude towards the fact that my character's perception of reality was not always clear. Therefore, my use of shadows in this context helped to encode the narrative behind my film, thus meaning that my use of shadows not only helped me to create continuity between my media text, but allowed me to combine my text in a way that would help my audience to decode the narrative of my film. This is another example of how I was able to create continuity between my text and combine them in an effective manner. I was able to create continuity between the poster and magazine front cover by using the same shadowing on the film title. This allowed me to use shadowing in order to conform to the conventions of the thriller genre, whilst also combining my media text in an effective manner. It is possible to say that capturing shadows within the footage for my trailer was slightly easier. I would say that it was slightly easier given that I could manipulate the lighting of the footage more, thus meaning that I was able to get more effective uses of shadows. However, the way in which I was able to also include shadows within my trailer meant that I was able to combine my media products in an effective manner. For example, in the aerial shot of Bee in the bath, the manner in which we directed for Bee to hold her arms up as though she was surrendering helped to create shadows. The way in which she held her arms up meant that the shadows were created from the manner in which her arms contrasted to the white colouring of the bathtub. This successfully helped to create shadows, thus proving that in my trailer I was also able to use shadows effectively. Demonstrates how I was able to use shadows in order to create a tense and eerie atmosphere within my trailer. The shadows that I had used successfully allowed me to conform to codes and conventions of the thriller genre within my trailer. Another example of a shot which I took that utilizes and makes the most of shadows is the close-up of the sink at night. Given that this shot was filmed in the dark, I used a low-key lighting setup in order to successfully help create eerie and distorted shadows. This shows how I was able to use the lighting within my trailer in order to conform to the conventions of the thriller genre. It also shows how I was able to effectively use the lighting in order to create shadows in an effective manner. Another example of how I've successfully managed to set up the lighting within the shot so that shadows are captured was in the close-up of the pills, whereby you can see the red light shining on the pills successfully helped to create a distorted and tense shadow. The shadow which I created in this shot was controlled by the lighting setup which I had used. Therefore, I could make the most of this shadow given that I could control how quickly and slowly it came to life. This therefore shows how I was able to be in control of the shadows that I created, meaning that I was able to create shadows in a manner that was going to be effective and conformative to the thriller genre. Another way in which I was able to effectively create shadows within my piece was in this shot of Bee looking out the window. From the way in which I captured this shot in a room that had big and open windows meant that I was able to create shadows from the windows. I was able to create shadows given that I filmed this shot at night, meaning that the reflection of different things within the room helped to make it look like the shadows were coming from the window. This therefore shows how I was successfully able to use the locations that I had and the time of day that I was filming in order to make the most of shadows within my work. The manner in which shadows were created from the window helped to create a tense and eerie atmosphere, given that you couldn't make out what was coming from the window. This therefore meant that my shadows conformed to the conventions of the thriller genre, given that they helped to encode this tense and eerie atmosphere which is needed within the thriller genre. Another example can be seen within the section of Bee and Justin arguing. As you can also see, I filmed this shot in a room that had big and open windows, meaning that shadows were created from the windows. This therefore successfully helped create a tense and eerie atmosphere which was conventional to the thriller genre. It meant that I was able to successfully use shadows in order to create a tense and eerie atmosphere, thus making my film trailer more recognizable within the thriller genre. This constant use of shadows that I have been using within my thriller trailer helps to show that I was establishing the use of shadows as a key theme within my trailer. This therefore means that when looking at all three of my media products under the same marketing campaign, you can say that they successfully are combined, given that they all use shadows effectively. Another example from my trailer where you can see how shadows have been used was in the close-up of the knife in the kitchen. The way in which we captured this shot so that shadows can be seen from the knife pressing down on the chopping board also is another example of a shot which helps to establish that shadows was a key theme within our trailer. The way in which we have consistently used shadows within different shots of our trailer not only ensures that the shadows help to ensure our trailer conforms to the conventions of the thriller genre, but it also helps to ensure that we have successfully established the use of shadows as a theme within our trailer, thus meaning that we can also use it as a theme within our ancillary products to combine our products effectively. Another example of where we have used shadows within our trailer and manipulated the lighting in order to create shadows is in this shot here of Bee looking out the window. In this mid-shot here, I successfully shined a torch onto Bee when filming the shot. Given that this shot was filmed when it was just about to go dark, the way in which I used the torch helped to create a shadow of her face against the white window. This therefore shows how I've successfully been able to use lighting and the manipulation of lighting within this shot in order to create shadows effectively within my trailer. Another example of a shot within our trailer that successfully uses shadows is this example of the door handle. Here when filming this shot, I also shined a torch onto the door handle, meaning that the door handle would create a shadow on the white background of the door. This would successfully then create an eerie and tense atmosphere when the door handle opened by itself. Therefore, through the use of shadows, I was successfully able to ensure that this shot conformed to the conventions of the thriller genre by using shadows which are conventionally associated with the thriller genre. Although there are many more examples of different footage within our trailer that makes use of shadows, I have only included some of the main shots that use shadows for the purpose of this video. Therefore, this shows how I was able to use shadows effectively throughout my trailer in order to establish that shadows were a theme within my trailer. Therefore, you're effectively able to see how I was able to use shadows within all three of my products to shelf my products and ensure that they belong to the thriller genre. Therefore, I successfully used shadows within all three of my products in order to ensure that my thriller products were decoded and understood by my audience to be thriller products. I was therefore able to effectively combine my three media products through the use of shadows which I used. I was effectively able to make sure that my audience understood that shadows were key themes within not just my trailer but my magazine and poster too. Therefore, the way in which I consistently used shadows within all three of my products helped to combine my products successfully, given that it helped to promote the genre in a similar manner. It therefore meant that my use of shadows helped to create a successful brand identity for my film. This therefore would help and ensure that my audience understood that my three products were working and functioning under the same marketing campaign. This would allow my consumer to identify my product through the consistent use of shadows which I had used. The way in which I had consistently used shadows, in my opinion, would also increase the success of my marketing campaign. It would increase the success given that they are all promoting the film and working to promote the film in a similar manner, meaning that consumers would have an idea about the products from the different products. This therefore means that there is clear cohesion between my three media products, thus meaning that it is easier for my consumer to understand that all three of the products are promoting the same film.